Welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church.
How does your faith kind of play into it, or does it play into it?
What can be done about it? When I say the church, I'm talking about evangelical white Christians and the black folk who attend their churches.
Hello, welcome to the Thrive podcast with the Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm Fred Jeff Smith, pastor of Shiloh, and I'm very happy that you chose to either view this on YouTube or Facebook or listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Prime. As always, we invite your input. If you have a question or a comment that you would like to share with us to help make the Thrive podcast better, you can reach out to me at fredjeffsmith@gmail.com, fredjeffsmith@gmail.com. I'm very happy today to welcome one of the major candidates for Mayor President of East Baton Rouge, Mr. Edward Ted James. Mr. James, thank you so much for taking the time to come and share with us today.
Thank you, Pastor. I appreciate the invitation.
You are a son of Shiloh.
That's right.
Brought up in Shiloh. You're now a member of Beacon Light Baptist Church. But let's start by asking you about your faith experience and how that has played a role in your decision to do public service.
Yeah, my father and your father alike always stressed the importance of, when God gives you a gift, you owe it to him to give it back. And for me, I always felt like leadership was something that God put inside of me at a very young age, and service to community was something that was taught to me not just at home but here at Shiloh. And the story of Nehemiah is always, folks that know me, they know that Nehemiah is my favorite biblical character, and we talk about how he gave of himself as a leader. As someone, the biblical story of Nehemiah is one that I have always admired and try to strive to do as he did and lead the people when as the leader, he brought the people with him. And I think that, it's something that has always just informed me as a young person in this community and still informs me today.
You have served as state representative in the state legislature. We're going to talk about the legislature before I let you go. And most recently, you served as regional secretary for the Small Business Administration.
Yep.
Tell me about that period of service and differentiate for me between service on the state level and service on the federal level.
I felt that as a legislator, especially in the Black Caucus, we focus so much on, the social issues, education, health care, and then towards the end of my service, a lot on policing. But we didn't have a real strong economic policy. And for me, it was a mixture of, a certain level of frustration in the legislature, and then an opportunity that I didn't seek that kept coming up. And I told the administration no a couple times about leaving the legislature because I wanted to fulfill my commitment that I made to the voters for their 4-year term. But when the opportunity kept presenting itself, ironically, I had a conversation with a friend of mine that went to LSU Law School that worked for the SBA under a prior administration. And when I was able to hear about how he was able to help folks, small businesses, build real wealth and take full advantage of procurement opportunities, I became really intrigued and decided to take that role. And it was strange at first because I enjoyed my freedom as a legislator. I was able to say what I want. I was able to go to different places and have my own opinion. Working in the presidential administration, my opinion was included in a box, right? Like, here are the things that you can talk about, and I was not supposed to have a personal opinion. I was supposed to go out there and talk about, SBA in global, but also what the Biden administration was seeking to do in terms of access to capital, in terms of, really moving the needle on procurement opportunities for small, disadvantaged businesses, many of those African-American businesses. So being able to really merge the policy, which I thought was the most important part. You got an idea, put it on paper, and you pass the bill and the policy. But being able to work on the administrative side when you have to actually put the policy into play was exciting for me, but also challenging in that, there were 10 offices and I had 10 district directors. Not all of those folks were Democrats. So not all of them were excited about the equity agenda that President Biden and Vice President Harris put inside the SBA in terms of looking at smaller capital infusions, right? Our SBA district office had about an average of $1 million loan. That's great for certain people. For small businesses, woman-owned, veteran-owned, black-owned, many of our businesses could not qualify for that much capital, nor could they did they even want that much capital, right? So the startup capital and working with nonprofit lenders was a new thing for the SBA. So that was exciting to be able to go to those lenders that wanted to invest in underestimated communities, who wanted to invest in certain areas where there was a lack of investment. In Dallas, it was reminiscent of Baton Rouge because we talk about Florida Boulevard as the line of division. In Dallas, there's Interstate 30, right? And they talk about below and above 30. And when you look at the type of investments on one side, it was like you were not in the same city, right? So it was challenging, but also rewarding in the aspect that I know we were able to really help some folks get their footing, rebound from COVID, but also really jump into the procurement aspect, which was my favorite part of the job.
How different is it to work in communities where there is a third major racial group? I mean, in Baton Rouge, it's primarily white and black.
That's right.
There's
That's
a
right.
small Hispanic
That's right.
population
That's right.
and even smaller Asian population. But in a city like Dallas, which you just mentioned, there's a sizable Hispanic population. In Houston, there's a sizable Hispanic population. How different is it when you're working with multiple ethnic groups or racial groups as opposed to just the two, the white and the black?
Brownsville, Texas, right on the border. We had an office there. And as I'm walking into a community, and I'm used to sometimes being a minority as African American, right? But when I'm in the community and I'm the minority and there are more Hispanics, number one, the language barrier, right? And really, how do we as a government agency make sure that we are putting our resources in terms where people can understand it, right? That was a major shift for the administration. The prior administration didn't make a real effort to put out things in bilingual, right? They didn't make an effort to put Spanish speaking.
Well, if you're going to keep them out at the border,
right.
then
Exactly.
there's no
reason. There's no reason to try to get them
Yeah.
capital.
Yeah.
But some of the same challenges, right? Access to information, sometimes purposeful. Access to resources, locking those resources out. And ironically, when I look at SBA lending, the SBA in the last 2 years has done more in the Hispanic community than the black community. And when you look at areas like Oklahoma, which was in my region, and New Mexico, when 90% of those small business owners are Hispanic, those inflate the numbers. But, by and large, we were able to do as an agency more. We almost doubled African American lending, but almost tripled in the Hispanic community. And what I did see was, just this familial relationship amongst the Hispanic community, and they worked well with kind of pulling their resources together. So I saw several different entities, the Hispanic chambers out there, pushed on their small business owners to fold their operations and join with similar operations that were, especially in the construction, janitorial, in order to go after large government contracts. So there was a huge push there, and it's something that we need to do a lot more of in our community, quite honestly. When we're looking at, how you lock people out of procurement opportunities is you put this large contract, knowing that small businesses don't have the capital, knowing that they don't have the insurance or the bonding. I started to stress on small businesses a lot more to combine those efforts so that they can qualify for those larger projects.
At some point, you decided to leave the federal government and to come back home.
Yeah.
And subsequent to that, you have decided to run for East Baton Rouge Parish Mayor President. Let's just be honest.
Yep.
8 years ago, you were a supporter of the current mayor.
That's right.
A very prominent supporter of the current mayor.
Yeah.
What happened over that span of time that led you to the decision to run against this current mayor for mayor's office?
You know, I'll tell you that some of it is frustration. The last 2 years traveling to DeSoto, Texas, and Conway, Arkansas, and San Antonio, different places that don't have a lot of the resources that we have in Baton Rouge. But in my opinion, they were moving farther. They were more aggressive. They were more innovative. And I had to ask myself the question, do I complain about it or do I step out and do something? And I will admit, it was not an easy conversation or an easy decision, but I talked with the mayor several times and, I spoke with her about my interests. I told her that I felt like it was something that was more in my heart. And honestly, it's at the time for me where I would have to make multiple excuses not to run. And for me, I had to say that my relationship with Baton Rouge was more important or took precedent to my relationship with Mayor Broome. And she and I had that conversation. It was not an easy one, right? But, as friends and as colleagues, we did. And for me, it's, I have a 6-year-old in Baton Rouge. And when by the numbers, we have a lot of our young people that go to Southern like I did, go to LSU, and then they leave Baton Rouge. And they're leaving because they are forced to decide between, home or opportunity, other places. And I've watched other areas smaller than Baton Rouge really invest in their downtowns, right, where they're inviting and there's a level of excitement for young people to stay. They're aggressively going after different industries that young people are interested in working in or joining. I mean, we're not doing that to the level that I'm comfortable in Baton Rouge. So I decided that I needed to get off the sideline and do something.
Most recently, a report came out about donors.
Yep.
Number one, you have received sizable numbers of donations, dwarfing what Mayor Broome has received at this point. But there's some question about some of the donors themselves. I'll be honest with you, I got a question about one or two of them myself.
I understand.
Steve Carter, Eddie Rispone. I'm not fans of either one of them. And when I see that they are contributing to your campaign, it leaves me to ask the question, what is it that they are seeing that would cause them to support you? So let me just ask it. What is it that you think led them to make the decision to financially, publicly support you the way in which they did?
Honest questions, and certainly, one that I've had. I've had it with members of this church that know me very well. I think the first thing that I would say is when people donate to a campaign, it's a support of your vision, not me an endorsement of their politics. I'll say that. And for Steve Carter, his family, I've always had very strong relationships with folks that are on the other side of the aisle. That's why I have several former Republican colleagues that are supporting me in this race, because I work with them. Don't have to agree with them all the time. And bipartisanship doesn't mean that you abandon your beliefs. Now, there are some names, and I know Mr. Rispone is one that, quite honestly, I didn't ask him to donate to my campaign. I didn't invite him to an event. He showed up. And when I started to speak about my intention to be the mayor president, and when I announced there was Baker, Zachary, and Central, and I said that I am going to be there as well as the unincorporated areas. Since then, and prior to his donation, we have St. George, right? That's a huge part of this conversation. I am not at all happy with the Supreme Court's decision. I work very hard against this effort. When you look at my campaign finance report, there are several members that have donated to the anti-St. George movement in 2019. They are supporting me. And you got Eddie Rispone, who is a major supporter of the pro-St. George movement. He's supporting me as well. Because I know how to work with people even though I don't agree with them. And because my vision for East Baton Rouge Parish is one based on economic development, is one based on, really eliminating blight and solving the crime problem. And for him, I guess he bought into it. I will tell you that it doesn't mean that I support any of his past policies on St. George or any of his other policies.
Or anything else, I would hope.
And that it just doesn't, right? And I think that, for the people in this community that know me, there's no way that I would be able to be as successful as I was on policing, on criminal justice reform, without working with Republicans.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for
Please
a
do.
second. Guy who spends money, especially rich guys
Yeah.
who spend money, they think of contributions as purchases, not as mere donations.
Yeah.
They expect something in return.
Yeah.
You're saying that you have not even had a conversation with Mr. Responder.
That's not what I said.
Okay.
Yeah,
Help me out.
I said that I did not ask him to
did not
donate
ask
to my
him. Okay.
campaign. I have had a subsequent conversation
Okay.
with him, and the
Has he
majority
shared
of the
with you
conversation.
what his expectation?
Well, what he
might be?
said, he wanted someone that's going to work to make sure that we are fairly having conversations about what happens with St. George now, right? And for me, I told him I didn't have to remind him of my stance. I have been against it since day one, right? I'm still against it. But as a lawyer, I have to respect the court. And what I told him, and I've said this publicly, I am going to make sure that the resources that need to be spent in Baton Rouge for the issues that we have in Baton Rouge are going to be spent. I am going to fairly make sure that we are funding this new city just like we do Baker, Zachary, and Central. That was my commitment. The other conversation, the majority of the conversation was about blight. He shared that he grew up in around St. Gerard, and he asked me, what was your plan around blight? 40 minutes of a 50-minute conversation was around blight, and my ideas around blight. When you look at my campaign finance report, the ironic thing is the mayor and her team, and I know that most people are not going to really look at the report. They saw 500,000 and they saw Eddie Rispone. Nobody's having a conversation about the fact that we had triple the number of donations under $100, 190 to 60 something, right? We have the most donations and the lowest dollar value. This is truly a grassroots campaign. And the conversation around just one donation, the folks that know me, they have to, they don't have to, right? That's naive of me to say that. I hope that they recognize that I won't be purchased by Eddie Rispone or by members of the folks that run the medical marijuana field that have donated to me. I'm not going to be controlled by them either. Now we'll have an open door policy as mayor president, right? But I'm not going to support anything that's not moving Baton Rouge forward. I'm just not.
Can we follow St. George a little bit further?
Yeah.
They came out with an announcement the other day of, the governor appointed a mayor
Yep.
of a mythical city because there's been a request for the state Supreme Court to review their decision.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's a mythical city, and the appointment of a chief of police for a non-existent police force.
That's right.
Because in St. George's plan that has been reported, the sheriff's office is supposed to be providing law enforcement for the city of St. George,
That's right.
which they're not supposed to do. They did it for Central.
Yeah.
And Sheriff Gautreaux was questioned about it, and it was told to him that the law doesn't really allow for him to do it. He said that he was keeping an agreement that his predecessor had made. That doesn't make it right. In fact, once you find out that what you're doing is wrong, you ought to stop it. But it sounds to me like they're doubling down on it by saying, well, yeah, we'll go ahead and be the chief law enforcement piece for the city of St. George. I got real problems with St. George. I got real problems with a group of people that want to form a city as the only viable means of getting an independent school system. I don't understand why it's okay for 20,000 people to vote for what 400,000 people ultimately have to pay for. There were more people who did not vote than those who actually voted for the city. And the rest of the parish has to live with the decision that was made. Now, you have served in government. So help me to understand the law.
Well, I'll tell you that I'm the only person that has filed legislation that would have required that the entire parish vote on that. It didn't pass, right? Filed it in 2014 and filed it in 2017. And I will add that, truth and honesty is very important. In 2017 was the mayor's first year in office. She and I worked together, right? Together, because we both thought that this was a horrible idea. From 2012, when they started with the school district, the mayor and I worked together. In 2017, we worked together on it. We didn't have the votes in the legislature to pass it. During this conversation, when it was just about the school districts, I never, not a single time, we could pull the tapes, I never said, oh, you can't get a school district because you don't have a city. Other folks that were against this, they kept making the argument, go create a city, go. We pushed them to do it, just as facts, right? Legally, it is easier to do what they did than to create another school district. To create another school district, you need 2/3 vote in the legislature. And then it goes to a statewide vote. And the entire state votes because the MFP impacts every single school district. And that's how we were able to kill it over and over again in the legislature because we went to other folks and said, look, your MFP is going to be impacted by this mythical school district. The other thing, we were going to upset choice for a lot of parents that kids went to McKinley like I did. If you lived outside, your kids couldn't go to McKinley anymore. Baton Rouge High, McKinley Middle, Flame, you couldn't go to those things. We kept it about those issues. It was easier legally to create another city because even if the Supreme Court reverses itself now, as a lawyer, I haven't seen it. Right? If they do, great, right? And then the two of us, myself and Mayor Broom, at this point, we're the only two people that have decided to run. We have to, and my commitment is if the Supreme Court says no, I want to be a strong enough mayor that they forget about going to create St. George again. I don't think it's going to happen. If the Supreme Court says no, I think that they will go and draw another line and go down this road again. What we need to do in 2019, They just released an article last week on the number of businesses that funded the effort against it. Ain't a lot of businesses led by folks that look like you and I that did that. We didn't fight hard enough in 2019. We didn't work, and I'm saying we. I know what I did personally. We collectively. We didn't work hard enough on getting annexations to make sure that we reduced the tax burden on Baton Rouge. We didn't work hard enough on the polls. The voter turnout was very low. That was strategic. They put it on a very low turnout ballot, right? And for us, my question is not so much as what they did, what we didn't do a good enough job of. We didn't annex enough. We didn't work hard enough on the election to get people to vote no.
There were several annexations.
Yeah, but
and now the creators of this mythical fantasy Disneyland city, that's what it is, a Disneyland city, are trying to revoke the annexations that have taken place post the vote. And trying to say, well, no, you didn't go through the proper process. You had to come before us in order to be annexed from the city. Well, you didn't exist.
You didn't have a city, right?
So
that's a flawed legal argument.
How can they come before you when you didn't even have a city? The hospitals have asked to come out. Many of the other companies and businesses out in that area have asked to be annexed into the Baton Rouge area. The truth of the matter is, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, they don't have enough revenue without a significant increase in taxes in order to fund a city. Now,
100%.
I've been through divorce.
Yeah, me too.
I know what divorces look like.
Yeah.
When you leave, you pay.
That's right.
But they want to leave. Yeah. They want to take all the stuff with them, including school buildings and facilities and properties and services. Yeah. And they don't want to pay a blessed dime for it.
Yeah.
What's the mayor president
and
East Baton Rouge Parish? Should it be Ted James?
Yes.
What's the mayor president going to say in response? To that?
Once I am going to fight tooth and nail to make sure, number one, you can't take all of the benefit and none of the responsibilities. So what I am challenged with now, let's take a step back, right? And I try not to take step backs because this is moving forward. The last 4 years, we've had a transition district that there was an appointment. We didn't make the appointment, right? Had I been in the seat, I think that my office would have been there. Even though I'd have been outvoted every single time, 4-1, 4-1. You're in the room. You're at the table in order to respond. Here we are 3 weeks later. We still don't have a plan of what are those resources. They're asking for a check. What are the things that they have to pay for, right? I have had conversations with the parish attorney's office right now. You would suspect that I'm getting limited information from the seat that I sit in. Now I'm not a public servant. I can't demand of them to give me information. But I have been talking with a lot of the council members to say, hey, whenever you have a public conversation about this, here are the things that people need to know in terms of, all of the buildings, every single building that's there. What have we invested from the city of Baton Rouge to St. George? What do they owe us in terms of legacy costs for all these different things? In terms of the Move Baton Rouge program, what this sales tax that was largely supported within the city of Baton Rouge, what projects are we going to shift, right? What are we going to shift to make sure that we are creating an equitable city in the city of Baton Rouge, those of us that are left here. Large infrastructure projects. Like I know when we talk about PQ Lane, the folks that live in that area, the legislators, they didn't vote for the revenue that I voted for that project, right? How do we shift those major projects now to make sure that we are taking care of the area that is now going to be large? We're talking about a $50 million hole. Baker, Zachary and Central for sure. Their taxes are going up in this mythical city if the Supreme Court says yes. There's no way that they can operate. I've been saying this from day one, right? Once I'm elected, I'm challenged to have to deal with those folks, and they're going to be a rude awakening. I would bring in a large firm, Deloitte or one of these firms, KPMG, to really look at across the board and tell us where are we financially. An uncompromised set of eyes. I think it's incumbent upon us to do that. Working with the Parish Attorney's Office from day one, they're trying to relate back to 2019 to the election and claim. And if they're going to ask for that, we're going to make sure that we have a reciprocal demand for what we paid for the last 4 years. I think that it's incumbent upon us to do that, right? And then working with the attorney, I will, regardless of what happens with the plan of government change that's before the voters in November that requires of the mayor's office to have an executive council. I'm going to have an executive council anyway.
You should mention that.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that, but stay with St. George just finish that because I want to get to
that's
that
right.
council too.
Yeah, so that piece, those are all of the things. The lawyer that I'm going to bring in, the accounting firm that's going to help inform a lot of these decisions, I think we're duty bound to do that, right? Because even with the school district, it's the same questions. Legacy costs, all these different things. Who owns the buildings? What do you owe? I'm better suited to go in as a certified mediator, right? As an attorney, as someone that has worked in multi-agency affairs as well. I have experience doing this, right? I haven't done it as a mayor, but I have experience doing it. And I believe that I'm better suited to have the conversation and to protect those resources in Baton Rouge in 2025 once elected.
St. George threatens the financial stability of the entirety of East Baton Rouge Parish. And a state Supreme Court has said that they can do this out of hand. They did not rule on the evidence. They simply said they told us that they could do it. We believe that they can do what they said they can do. We're not going to worry about looking at evidence. Why look at evidence?
Yeah, don't let good facts get in the way.
The Chief Justice said that it was procedural malfeasance.
That's right. Yeah.
Is there an opportunity, besides asking the state Supreme Court to reconsider, is there any legal means by which this could go to a higher court?
No.
Say the federal court.
I don't see because there are no federal issues. I don't see this going to the United States Supreme Court. I'm challenging that. They said you can do it, but didn't give boundaries. They didn't give an incorporation date. So this is far from over, right? In terms of let me not sound hypocritical. I've never seen the Supreme Court reverse itself, especially this court, right? I'm hopeful that they will. Let me be very, very clear, right? Although I'm better suited to work with us if they say yes, I also want Baton Rouge to stay whole, right? Incorporation date, boundaries, annexations, this thing is going to go on for a very long time, right? And those things will likely continually go back up to the Supreme Court. Every annexation, the courts can combine those or they can do them individually. I suspect that there will be a lot more annexations, right? So this is probably a 1.5 to 2 year process before there's a level of comfort or at least finality. There probably won't ever be comfort, but at least until there's something final, there's so many legal issues that are still left undetermined at this point.
The Louisiana State Supreme Court was just redistricted, and a second majority black district was formed.
That's right.
You and I both know the leading candidate for
Mm-hmm.
that position.
Yeah.
If things were to be protracted until this particular person was seated
Mm-hmm.
on the bench, because I have every reason to believe that he's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Do you think that that would in any way change the complexion of the court?
I want to be prayerful and say yes, but numbers are still numbers. And we will still have 2 Democrats, and they will be in the minority, right? And let me say this. While I know the person that you're speaking of, there are several other candidates, and I'm good friends with all of them. So, and either of them, I believe, would be an added benefit to the court, right? When the court should look just like we redistrict Congress, right? The Supreme Court doesn't look like the actual diversity. We still don't have adequate representation on the Supreme Court, even with the adding of an additional minority seat, right? And this is a constant reminder that every single election, every single one, from school board, this year is the presidential election, everybody's voting. Everybody's going to be out there. Every single, especially the courts. If you look at our history, it's not been the legislature that has given us most of the rights that we enjoy. It's the courts, right? So who in those elected positions and appointed positions and the folks that make those appointments, those are every single election.
That was certainly true in our history, but the last 10, 12 years, that has not been the case.
What do you mean?
Republicans have done a masterful job of taking over the federal courts.
Well, yeah, the elections have consequences. Yeah, and Democrats, we get bullied too much.
They have appointed judges that have a very different view and a very different interpretation of the law.
That's right.
To the point that I am no longer confident in the courts making fair decisions. This is not the Supreme Court of Thurgood Marshall.
That's right.
And Clarence Thomas is no Thurgood Marshall.
Yeah, and we got to look at the person that appoints him, right? And that's the president of the United States. And it was Hillary. We don't like Hillary. She's mean. We don't like her pantsuits. We don't like this. Donald Trump is cool. He's the guy that we've seen on TV. Oh, we don't check her emails. And we didn't support Hillary. And this is what we have, because Donald Trump was able to put the court in a position. It used to be judges would just run on their experience. Now you get judges that run and they basically tell you how they're going to rule. We're pro-family. We're pro-Second Amendment. They are able to be partisan on the bench. And as a lawyer, the Supreme Court is supposed to be the thing that we hold and we all trust, right? And it's no longer there, and I agree. Elections, right? I don't like the candidate, but are we comfortable with the consequences? And those are the decisions that we have to ask. And then as a Democrat, we got to stop being pushed around, right? When President Obama had the opportunity to appoint and they stalled and we didn't push hard enough, right? And here we are, we got another justice that just like you said, that is, politicking from the bench. And it is a strange dynamic as someone who studied these things, and the Supreme Court is supposed to be the conscience, not another partisan body, but here we are.
Can I ask you one or two more questions about your decision to run?
Yes.
Mayor Broome has served for 8 years. She has the potential to serve one final term. You're a relatively young man.
Yeah.
Why would you not wait until after she served her third term and then run for mayor president?
2020, right? I spent about 6 days in the hospital. So I know that tomorrow is not promised, right? And in the book of James, we're cautioned about being boastful about tomorrow, right? We teach young people, you do your work, you study, you get your lesson, you listen to your parents, you can accomplish anything you want. We don't tell young people you could accomplish anything you want once we tell you it's okay. So, for me, guided by what I know is being presented in front of me, I am young, but I'm also running out of time. And, I suspect that this race is going to be very, very competitive. And for me, like, quite honestly, Pastor, I'm not quote unquote, waiting my turn, as folks have asked me to do. And, the irony of it is most people remember Mayor Broom from being the first female elected mayor. I remember her in 1988 when she was 30-something years old, and she challenged Pearl George, who was a civil rights legend and an icon. And I think it is almost hypocritical of people to ask me to wait my turn when the mayor didn't wait her turn when she challenged Pearl George. She felt it in her heart. She prayed about it. She felt that she had something to offer to the community, and she ran. I'm inspired by that. And now, don't ask me to do something that she wasn't willing to do, right? And then, quite frankly, Ted and Harper in 4 years, I would probably be fine, right? I would probably have, less stress and be making a lot more money than the mayor's office pays. It is my opinion that Baton Rouge can't survive another 4 years the way we're going. And for me, it was not an easy decision, but it's a decision that I'm comfortable living with.
Do you think that those Republicans that have supported you are supporting you?
Yeah.
Do you think that their hope is to split the Democratic ticket for the purposes of bringing because no one has said that a Republican might enter the race, but it is certainly possible. Qualifying has not been done yet.
We got a couple months.
It's possible that a Republican could decide to run. What's your response to those who say that your candidacy will split?
I think that some folks that are saying that aren't paying attention to the numbers. The mayor of East Baton Rouge Parish is going to be a Democrat. Period, point blank, right? We have seen this before. I'm not the first Democrat to run against Mayor Broom, and Mayor Broom has been successful both times. I will tell you that the folks working hardest to find a Republican to run for mayor they are not Republicans. And I am, I think that, for me, it's challenging in that I hear the complaints on both sides about the partisanship. We hate what we see in D.C. It's too much bickering, right? People can pick apart. Democrats can complain about the president and all these different things, and folks complain about the Republican Party. And here I am building something that is across the board, right? It is not going to look like what the federal fight that we're going to have, the us versus them. That's not what I'm building, right? So now that we have the presentation, folks are acting like I'm doing something very novel, right? This is not the first time that a bipartisan effort has been put together. It may be the first time in Baton Rouge. But for me, there are several Republicans that know that a Republican can't win, right? There are several Republicans that have a very strong working relationship with me from my prior work in the legislature, my work as an attorney, my work with the Urban League. I remember when the Urban League first started in Baton Rouge, and I was the executive director, and Baton Rouge Area Foundation invested about $350,000, and folks said, you shouldn't take their money. Why y'all taking their money? And we developed a dual enrollment program in Scotlandville, and we help young people walk out of Scotlandville with a diploma and an industry-recognized credential. Now, again, I can criticize a lot of things that were happening at the Baton Rouge Area Foundation. But those resources, right? Those resources, helped us to really provide opportunity for young people. And again, an investment in a campaign, I'm gonna go back to what we said earlier, is not me agreeing to do anything that I know your father would be disappointed in me for doing, and my father would be disappointed in me for doing. But this race fast is something different, right? And I am running to be the mayor president of this entire parish. And right now there are no Republicans running. I suspect before then they're working really hard to try to find one. I still believe that at the end of the day, not only will a Democrat be elected, but it will be me because of the coalition that I'm building. And, for folks that don't know me, research, my level of work in the African-American community. This might sound a little arrogant, but I will put my body of work and my support for black people against anybody. especially the people that are running or talking about running in this race. I'm confident in that, and I've stood strong, and I will always stand strong. And bipartisanship does not mean that I'm ignoring who Ted James is.
Let's talk about redistricting for a
Yes.
second. There has been a decision for congressional redistricting. There's been a decision for state Supreme Court redistricting. We have not decided as a community to redistrict the Metro Council. We are a majority black parish and a majority black city. And yet the Metro Council still holds a 7-5 white majority. What's your opinion about
I've asked the same question
for the Metro Council?
I've asked the same question of council members, right? And I know, from Chair of the Black Caucus, this has been a 4-year, even 4.5. In 2020, we went out there and made sure folks were counted in the census, because we knew without that, we wouldn't get to this point. As chair of the caucus, we had a demographer. We didn't wait on somebody else to come in. We hired a demographer. We worked with the members. We practiced in committee to lay the record. We did all of the work for what we're seeing now in redistricting, from the Congress to the Supreme Court, and even the courts have said for the legislature. There are more seats owed to us, right? The Metro Council hadn't moved. I've asked the same questions, right? And that is the type of strategy, that's the type of forward-thinking things that should be taking place, right? Now, I've heard as of last week, that there may be some movement in that regard. So there are some conversations about some members of the council and some community members looking at going to the courts in order to redistrict. But I think we're 4 years too late behind it, to be honest.
I think we're 12 years too late.
Yeah.
But I'll take 4.
Yeah.
The Metro Council being the way that it is, even though they saw fit to make Lamont Cole mayor pro tempore, they vote as a block, and they vote in ways that are disadvantageous to the majority of those who reside within this community. One of the things that is being promoted right now is this idea of a city manager, which I am vehemently opposed to. Every day I post on my little Facebook page.
I see it.
Say no to a city manager. No apartheid in Baton Rouge. Should you become mayor? This is going to be one of the things that
Most
you're
definitely.
going to have to
100%,
deal with.
100%.
What would be your response?
I
have no problem with the city manager, the idea as such. But a city manager that is appointed by the Metro Council.
I'm 100% against it. 100, and I'm gonna be very clear, because this is one of the issues that my words have been confused. Ted James, I don't care what you call the position. You call it a city manager, you call it a CAO. I've worked with city managers. The credentials, the job description. We already heard at the council meeting Dante say, "I already do this stuff," right? So whatever you call it, I don't care, right? I don't want this council. Honestly, if the council was 7-5, if it was 7 Democrats and 5 Republicans, I wouldn't want them to be able to veto my decision. The people trust me to elect me as the mayor president, trust me to put my team in place, right? I know that there are, this weak mayor system, right? I wouldn't quit a job. I wouldn't have you ask the questions of why are you, running against someone who was a friend. I wouldn't do all that to then punt the responsibilities to someone that the council gets to decide on. Wouldn't do it. But as far as the conversations about, the city manager type, for a city, a parish that have a budget of $1 billion, number one, we can't even bring the type of person that people are saying for what we pay them, right? We got to pay them a little more. We also need a grants person, right? One person in my administration is going to be solely focused on federal grants, from transportation to EPA to HUD. That is that man's job. All you're doing is looking for resources in the federal government that we can apply for in East Baton Rouge Parish. I will ask the voters myself to vote no to the plan of government changes, not just because of the city manager piece, but because I have ideas that I'd like to go in and change the plan of government. And I don't want to ask the voters to vote on it and potentially change it this year and again next year or the year after. So there are several reasons why I think we need to vote no on the plan of government changes. Once we decide on this St. George piece, we got to have some real conversations about city parish government, across the board. And there may be some other changes because what I watched when I watched that meeting when they put forward these changes, and it wasn't a bipartisan approach. I think we had one Democrat that voted to move it forward. I'd like to see a proposal that is supported by, Republicans and Democrats alike. And that didn't happen this time. And it's unfortunate.
You mentioned voting and changes in government. We're talking about city parish. The governor wants to change the constitution of the state, and he is moving at warp speed to try to accomplish that and get it on the ballot by November. The last time the Constitution for the state was changed, and I'm asking you this because of your experience in the state legislature. The last time the Constitution was changed was 1972, 73. It was Edwin Edwards. It took better than a year of planning before anything was ever done. This governor came into office in January, and here we are in May as this is being recorded, and he's trying to change the entire state constitution and have it voted on by the people in November. What's your response to that, and how it will affect Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish? Because he has particular dislike for New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Shreveport. Now, I would sense that his dislike for Shreveport has softened
dissipated a little bit
since they've changed their administrative structure. But he has a strong distaste for New Orleans and Baton Rouge. So as a candidate for mayor, what would be your response to
I am vehemently opposed to a constitutional convention for several reasons. Number one, my former colleagues have absolutely no business being the folks to write the Constitution. I would only support a constitutional convention if it's people-driven, not the elected officials. That's number one. Number two, I shared this with you, but earlier, I was at the Capitol last week, and I was walking, trying to get to the basement. One of the new members didn't know how to get to the basement. They haven't been there long enough to be tinkering with the Constitution. Now, being a new governor is like driving a new car off the lot. Your power starts to depreciate. So he is pushing and pushing and pushing, and there are certain members that have had projects threatened. You got to be able to stand up and say no, and then you got to go to your district and say, look, this road that we thought we were going to get, we're not going to get it because I stood up to the governor and I'm not supporting this constitutional convention. It's way too fast, but I do think that we as a legislator, we tinker with the Constitution too much. Every year there's some type of change to the Constitution. We do that way too often. There needs to be some type of shift, right? Not under this body, because we know that the courts have already told us that this body is not truly reflective of the demographics. So I wouldn't even support it until we are able to seat a legislature that is fully represented. And what I mean is the legislature already told us we need more minority seats, right? We shouldn't even have this conversation unless and until we get to that point. Then it needs to be people-driven and not legislative-driven. And I'll be telling people to vote no.
The current mayor came out in favor of a plan for LSU to build a new arena. It's one of the issues where I disagree totally. I don't care if LSU gets a new arena. They want to spend $300 million to net 2,600 seats, and they can get the private dollars to do that. That's fine. My concern was, and I voiced this to the mayor when she sat where you're sitting. Why is there a need for a 30-year non-compete clause that essentially shuts down any kind of development and improvement in downtown Baton Rouge? The Kane Center, everything seems to be put on hold. Talk about doing improvements at Memorial Stadium and Pete Gosby Field and what have you. All of that seems to be up in the air at this point because a few people have decided that they want a new arena at LSU. $350 million for a net of 2,600 seats. Makes no sense at all. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I'll tell you that, since there's been an ask to examine my campaign finance report, I invite everyone to examine the mayors and the folks that are pushing it. They're not on mine. They're on hers. And there's this accusation about City Hall, not being up for sale. City Hall is already up for sale, right? The River Center has already been up for sale. And that wasn't me. That's the current administration. I know that we have not had any large conversations about real investments in downtown under this current administration, right? I believe that to be, something that's holding us back when we have two major universities and the numbers are telling us that young people don't stay here. Young people want a vibrant downtown, period. Right? I want a vibrant downtown. My law office is downtown. Unless and until we start to make real investments in downtown, we're not going to be able to reverse the trend. We could have multi-million-dollar campaigns about better in Baton Rouge and telling our story. If we don't invest in downtown, it's not happening. What I saw, I watched the city council meeting. I saw the mayor stand there and not be able to answer really strong questions about it. The idea about what's happening in Memorial Stadium, I have a lot of ideas about it because I'm the one that filed the bill to make that happen. The law said that you can only use Memorial Stadium for recreation. I filed a bill of maybe 2019 or 2020 that allowed for the type of investments that I'm hearing. I know what the plans were back then. I don't know what they look like today. We cannot, public-private partnerships, I'm not against them. I am against coming to the people and not being able to accurately answer the questions, to talk about the specific plan. And I will tell you that we don't have a plan right now because we're waiting on those same folks that are going to financially benefit from it to tell us what the plan is. And I'm being honest.
My concern is, how is it that we can say we love free enterprise until we actually get to employ free enterprise? Why is there a need for a 30-year non-compete clause?
I think that's because that's what the developers wanted.
To build a new arena. I mean, really? You are going to build this state-of-the-art facility and you need the Kane Center to not do any development for 30 years in order for that to happen, for them to not be able to try to utilize their facility to its fullest extent? It goes against this whole idea of capitalism. We're supposed to be a capitalist country, and we're supposed to love the idea of free competition until you actually have some free competition, and then there's a change of heart regarding that.
Well, I think I could use that next time someone asks me about while I'm running. I say the same thing, that people say competition is good until you get in the ring. But for me, there is a need for us to fully invest in our downtown, just like there's a need for us to fully invest in North Baton Rouge and Plank and to take the Southern University plan off the shelf. What I'm hearing today doesn't get us there. And I believe that you could have accomplished the same thing without basically putting on the shelf the best asset that we have downtown, and that's the River Center. Now, I'm trusting in, and I've heard the mayor talk about this in her administration. I think that whenever the plan is out there, hopefully some of the questions may be answered. But when you don't have a dedicated executive council on your team, that's how folks can sneak in things like a 30-year non-compete. And the federal government is already telling us that we're not even supposed to be doing non-competes anymore, right? So what that does for this deal, I don't know. But for me, I think that was a major sticking point. I think that, we could have done a much better job of, having conversations all across the parish before the Metro Council voted on this. But it's election year, and there's some strange things that happen in election years.
One last question. I want to ask you about education savings accounts.
Yes.
Again, an idea, a proposal from the governor. I know the mayor does not directly impact public education, but certainly you have a bully pulpit that you can utilize for public education. Is there really a need to put multiple thousands of dollars in the hands of six-figure income families so
Yeah.
that they can continue
Yeah.
to send their children to private
Yeah.
school?
I'll be honest, I would benefit from it. I wouldn't vote for it if I was in the legislature, right? I have the resources to send my child where she needs to go, but I know what East Baton Rouge Parish school system did for Ted, right? And if we were an A-rated school district, right, maybe we can have a conversation. Maybe have a conversation about, or just across the state, right? If we weren't 49th and 50, maybe we can have a conversation. But we are not nowhere close to, we don't invest in public education now.
But is it
so we shouldn't be
even a
doing
fair comparison? Because these schools, private schools, don't have to have certified teachers.
That's right. That's
Private
right.
schools don't
That's
have
right.
to take standardized
Yeah,
tests.
yeah. They get the benefit without the responsibilities.
And they get to say, no.
No.
You can't come here.
Yeah.
No, you're causing a problem, and
Yeah.
and you can't stay here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet they still get multiple under this proposal. They would get multiple families would get multiple thousands of dollars to send their children to these schools, and it further fractures an already fractured and weakened public school
100%.
system.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
yeah.
what
You know-
would Mayor James say to the East Baton
Yeah.
Parish School Board regarding this?
Yeah,
and to the state legislature.
You know, I think that it is a huge step back when we are ready. You know, we're seeing what's happening with these Baton Rouge Parish schools, right? We had bus drivers that didn't want to go to work because they're already strapped, right? We have young people from, the mayor doesn't control the schools, but the mayor controls Head Start. We have hundreds of young people that today, I went to Head Start in this building, right? We have kids sitting on waiting lists that need to be in schools today in this parish, right? We have to correct that. We also, and I told EBR this from 2012, we got to do a better job of telling our story. We have to all these different charter schools, they're pulling kids every single day from East Baton Rouge Parish schools, every single day. We can no longer
But their grades are not any better
than
East Baton Rouge Parish
But let me tell you
schools.
what's happening. They're obviously doing a better job appealing to parents because parents are making these decisions to pull their kids out of our schools to go to charter schools. So we as a district, East Baton Rouge has to do a better job of telling its story. We have to make sure that the story doesn't just include Baton Rouge High, Liberty, Wham, and Flame. We have to talk about the strength of all of our schools. When I talk about us having a Baton Rouge agenda, that includes the schools. I've watched New Orleans schools. I've watched Shreveport, and I've watched Lafayette School Board come to the Capitol and be able to cut out little things that were important to them. I am going to be a huge partner with the school system from the mayor's office to make sure that we're pulling resources down. I think we could do a lot more from the business community. Business folks that have contracts with the city, they should be providing jobs for young people in the summer, right? Literacy programs, that's going to take us going to the legislature and pulling some dollars from the state capitol. It'll take us pulling some dollars from the Federal Department of Education and even some philanthropic dollars right now in the summer. I envision a very strong literacy program in the summer of 2025 that I'm going to help lead because I know with my daughter, right? My daughter struggled at the beginning of the year. I called a coach, I had a speech pathologist. Fortunately for Harper, I have those resources, and her mother has those resources. 98% of the kids in Baton Rouge don't, right? And we have to be more intentional about what we do for those folks, right? And as mayor, I'm gonna make sure that I'm a strong partner. And if there are resources that I'm gonna, have to deploy, I think that's on the table as well.
You think that we should get away from the agrarian, outdated school calendar that we've been using for the last 100 years and just go around? I mean, there are other states that have been doing year-round schooling for a long, long time.
I said this when I announced. I am a proponent of year-round schools, right? I'm not saying that I'm going to use the mayor's office to go out there and push that. But, for me, we still are in this COVID gap, right? We still have folks that were already set up behind, right? And then COVID, right? So now we have the traditional, what we already knew our kids were already behind. You add COVID, so now we're 4 and 5 years behind and still trying to play catch up. And the summer months can be huge in being able to help, address that learning loss. And it's something I'm gonna make sure that we have the opportunities out there when I'm mayor And I've already had a lot of conversations with EBR about it. Number one, we got to make sure that more of our teachers are certified in this literacy. I'm saying it wrong, but there's a different certification that the teachers need to be able to do this. So we've had conversations about how we amplify that. There are a lot of teachers that would love a stipend over the summer for them to be able to go in, and then the social services that are wrapped around schools, right? Breakfast and lunch. A lot of kids for the summer, they're going to be with their grandparents. They're going to be with an older cousin. They might be with an older sibling, and they are not getting the social services that are embedded during the school year. And then with that, if you're hungry, and if you're watching TV all day, you're not learning how to read, right? So we got to do a better job of servicing those young people. And that's my commitment, to be able to do that to the best of my ability and working with East Baton Rouge Parish Schools.
Look into that camera right
Yes.
there. That's your camera.
Yep.
And say to the potential voters of East Baton Rouge
Yeah.
Parish why they should support Ted James.
Yes, Ted James has spent the past 12 years dedicated in service to this community. I have traveled this country, and I've seen what effective government is doing to raise the quality of life in places that don't have an LSU or Southern. They're not the seat of state government. They don't have industry, but they have leadership and vision. I'm running to bring that culture of excellence to the hometown that raised me, and I want you to trust me in this. I'm not asking you to vote for me yet. I'm asking you to trust me. And if you trust me on November 5th, I have no doubt that you will vote for me. And we're going to make Baton Rouge the city that we can all be proud of, and add value to the things that are working, and we're going to correct the things that are broken.
Thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
I really
appreciate
the
it.
time.
I appreciate the tough questions,
Thank
too.
you for viewing. Thank you for listening. We'll be back again next time.